Okay, in this video, we'll be exploring what an extraneous solution is. Okay, so let's scroll down, and what I did is I went online and I just found a definition of extraneous solution. And what it says is extraneous solutions of an equation are extra solutions that work in subsequent equations that are obtained in trying to solve an equation, but that do not work in the original equation. These extraneous solutions are caused by squaring both sides of an equation or by multiplying both sides of an equation by an expression containing a variable. And so what they're asking us to do in this activity is they're asking us to solve this equation and then tell which of these four choices are actual solutions, extraneous solutions, or they're not even a solution at all. And so I'm going to work this problem and try to help you understand. So I'm going to rewrite the problem over here so I can work it. Negative 2 times the square root of 4x squared equals 64. Now our first step in solving this equation is going to be to get rid of this negative 2. And it's being multiplied, so the opposite of multiplication is to divide negative 2 on both sides. And so I'll have the square root of 4x squared equals negative 32. Okay, now the next step is I need to get rid of this square root. Well, the opposite of square root is to square both sides, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to square both sides. Well, remember that since the opposite of square root is squared, all that does is get rid of the square root and the squared, so all I'm left with is 4x squared equals whatever negative 32 squared is. And so I went to my calculator and I typed in negative 32 squared and I got 1,024. And now to keep solving, I need to get rid of that 4 right there. So I'm going to divide 4 on both sides, and so I have x squared equals 256. And I'm almost done, but I'm not done because the x isn't by itself. It has this squared with it, and the opposite of squared is square root. So I need to square root both sides, and so x will equal, the square root of 256 is 16, but the square root of 256 is also negative 16. And so those are my two solutions right there. Okay? 16 and negative 16. Now let's go back up here and let's look at each one of these. Now, it looks to me like 16 and negative 16 I need to bubble in as either actual solutions or extraneous solutions. But negative 8 seems to be a neither. And 4 seems to be neither, but we need to check them. So the only way we can tell what 16 and negative 16 are is to plug them in for x and see if it gives us a true statement. So let's plug 16 into the original equation. And so I've got negative 2 times the square root of 4 times 16 all squared equals 64. And I'm trying to see, is that a true statement? So let's simplify it. So the first thing let's do is let's calculate what 16 squared is. And so I got 256, and so this is negative 2 square root of 4 times 256. Let's see if it'll let me erase that. Yep. 256. All has to equal 64. And so I've got negative 2 times the square root of, and let's multiply 4 times 256, and that gives me 1,024, and that has to equal 64. And we're almost done. Now let's calculate what the square root of 1,064 is right here. And so I'm going to put the square root into my calculator real quick, and it tells me 32. And so I've got negative 2 times 32 because the square root of 1,024 was 32. And that has to equal 64. Well, negative 2 times 32 is negative 64, which does not equal 64. And so positive 16 ended up being an extraneous solution. And the only way I could know that positive 16 was an extraneous solution was to plug it in for x and see if it gave me a true statement. 16 did not give me a true statement. Okay, so now let's plug in negative 16 and see if it's an actual solution or an extraneous solution. Okay, so I'm going to write the formula. Negative 2 square root of 4x squared equals 64. And now what I'm plugging in for x is negative 16. Say negative 16. And so I've got negative 2 times the square root of 4 times negative 16 all squared, and that must equal 64. And so I've got negative 2 times the square root of 4 times, and negative 16 squared is positive 256, and that has to equal 64. And then 4 times 256 is 1,024, so I have negative 2 times the square root of 1,024, and that has to equal 64. And then I will divide by negative 2 on both sides. And so the square root of 1,024 must equal negative 32. And I take the square root of 1,024, 1,024 square root, and it gives me 32 equals negative 32, which is not true. And so according to this, positive 16 is also an extraneous solution. And so in this case, both of our answers ended up being extraneous or extra solutions. So it looks like in this case there's not a solution to this equation. At least none of these four are solutions to the equation. And so basically we're saying on this problem that there are no solutions to this equation. There's no way you can plug a number in for x and your output be 64 right here. And so what I did is I went to Wolfram Alpha just to verify that this is true. And so check this out. This is my screenshot from Wolfram Alpha, and you can see what I put in. Solve negative 2 times the square root of 4x squared equals 64. And it wrote it for me so that I could interpret what was input. And this is like the original problem. And you can see it says the result, no solutions exist. So the two solutions we got were extraneous. And I want you to see that here's your equation, your original one right here. Okay, I'm going to zoom in on it for you. Negative 2 times the square root of 4x squared equals 64. And I want you to see that what we put in Wolfram Alpha is the same, and that it tells us the result, no solutions exist. And so that I know you actually watched this video, at the bottom right of your paper, I want you to put the word Roku, R-O-K-U. Write it small at the bottom right of your paper, R-O-K-U.